Hello, Sydney. And all in the sound of my voice. Welcome to this special presentation of the Paper Street Podcast. Welcome to Late to the Party. My name is Shawn Talley. I am one half of this usual operation here, and you will hear the other half, Mr. Cameron Burns, shortly as I pitch to these forthcoming compiled minisodes. Late to the Party is a program that we feel anyone can jump into at any time. If you notice we're covering a movie that you've seen or maybe know real well, you can tune in and hear us and a guest chat about it. All good. But again, this being a very special case, on a very special episode, we lock Alex Cuervo inside a refrigerator. Punky Brewster, anybody? No, not that kind of special episode. This is a unique one in that we do hope, assume, demand that you have at least listened to the episode on the original Scream movie that we first did with guest Alex Cuervo, because what we are doing here is following through with an idea that was more or less talked about at the end of said Scream installment and continuing to come back to Mr. Cuervo, get his first time reactions as he watched the follow-up sequels in Scream 2, 3, and 4. And give or take a few days here and there, we essentially reconvene with him in back-to-back-to-back weeks following Scream 1. So we are getting his fresh reactions, his hot takes, and kind of reassessing the sequels ourselves because I know for me personally, I had only seen parts 2, 3, and 4 once a piece in their respective theatrical runs. So I was very glad to revisit each of these. But without further ado, we first pick back up with Alex to talk 1997's Scream 2. Joining us once again, Mr. Alex Cuervo. Alex has now seen Scream 2, and he's here to talk about it in a more truncated fashion. But initially, thank you, Alex, for agreeing to do these sequels as we kind of talked out loud in the initial Scream episode. But what were your initial reactions and the kind of overall thoughts on Scream 2?
I liked it. I liked it a little bit less than Scream. I gave Scream an A, and I give this a B. There's moments where it's teetering on B plus, but it's not. I guess I'm in now, so it doesn't. Watching it so closely to seeing the original, it doesn't quite live up to it. I wouldn't say it's better. It's good. It's not great.
Well, we talked about on the Scream episode, which was so wildly popular, we had to come back and do now Scream 2. So you're probably getting a lot of fan mail. But we talked about on that one how Scream kind of led to the WB-ification of casting in these horror movies. Well, welcome to that.
Yeah,
Scream 2 comes back with everyone. That cast is the prettiest cast in the history of movies. Like everyone who's ever been on a WB show shows up.
That was kind of a delight. Now this many years removed from it, this was kind of like that was entertaining. A lot
Josh,
of the Dawson's Creek Fringe guy, Josh
Jackson.
Yeah. I've never watched Dawson's Creek because. See previous episode, but I was a huge Fringe fan, so I like him a lot. It was cool to see him. I was surprised he was just there for that great scene that he was in, the movie discussion scene, but I thought he would be around a lot more than it seemed.
Yeah, I think he was just doing his
killed.
I think he's just doing his boy Kevin Williamson a solid day playing. But it is funny. Like a lot of the actors in this have really aged well in the sense that there aren't very many where you're like, oh, I haven't seen that person in 20 years. Really, Elise Neal as the college roommate is the only one who's kind of fallen off the map where you're just like, oh yeah, I remember her, but not really. All the rest of them have gone on to pretty long careers.
So cold open and follow-up scenes showing that a little bit of time's passed, roughly 2 years, as we talked about, enough for Gail to write the book and for it to be adapted into a film Stab. And we'll talk about that cold open in a minute. But speaking of some of the actors, the in-movie characters are played by Tori Spelling, who had a little funny callback from the first movie when somebody said it could probably be played by Tori Spelling. But then Luke Wilson as Billy and Heather Graham as the Drew Barrymore character. Yeah,
those are great. And honestly, I'm really glad that I watched Scream 2 so close to having seen Scream 1 because I wouldn't get the callback if I'd waited a year. It might have gone over my head. But having seen it so recently, it was extra funny for me because I remembered it was fresh in my mind that she'd made that comment about Tori Spelling in the first film. So that was a really we both laughed quite a bit at that.
Am I the only person that spent every time Stab was on screen? I just would remember thinking how did Courtney Cox know about any of this? Like, no, I understand how she knows like the nuts and bolts, but like the conversation between Sydney and Billy, where he's like basically tells her to get over her mom's death. It's just like she ain't talking to Sydney, and she sure as shit ain't talking to Billy. So how did she know these scenes happened? So that's also, I've seen this movie like 100 times, so I had time to just kind of pull off and think about that. But like, yeah, like Gail really did her research, because stab is exactly what happened in Scream 1. I almost think there's a funnier version where like the people are doing stuff that are like kind of the same but different, where she doesn't really know what happened, so she's just kind of guesstimating based on what we know. I think that would have been really funny too.
That would have been hilarious. Yeah, that would have been really good.
Far be it for me to tell Kevin Williamson how to write a movie, but I do love the stabness. I think the cold open is one of the better cold opens in the series.
Cold open's great. I love that somebody shushes Jada in the theater, and everybody's being fucking ridiculous. Like, that was not an Alamo Drafthouse.
No.
And everybody's like screaming and throwing shit and stabbing each other. And she makes a comment and somebody's like, shh.
That is what I imagine this Taylor Swift Eras tour is like if you go. But instead of stab costumes, they're dressed like Taylor Swift and dancing like crazy people. But that's what I imagine that's like. Yeah, I love the meta. Like, it just leans right back into the meta nature by having the stab thing happen. And then my favorite thing about this movie is that it really cements the Dewey Gale of it all.
Yeah.
The Dewey Gale love story, which I think is so perfect. And like, I love how Gale and Dewey, they become this thing, and as we do more movies, you'll kind of see, but like, they also never really change. Gale's always kind of a bitch, and Dewey's always kind of a goof. And like, they like each other, but they don't change for each other. And that dynamic is so good. And this is the movie that really kind of hammers that home.
David Arquette is so good at reaction shots. He has some really nice ones in this.
He to me he's
subtle facial, reactions to things. He's really great.
He's the hidden weapon of the Scream movies. I really believe that. Like, Neve Campbell is obviously like the engine that makes it work, but like, Dewey is one of the great characters in horror. And Arquette, I mean, no one really talks about Arquette when you talk about like the great actors of all time or anything, but like, he's just perfect in that break.
He's great. I'm a fan. Yeah, I've always been a fan.
He's so good. So I guess, what did you think? Let's break it up by like the first hour. What did you think about the first hour, which was kind of build up and getting to know the 35 new characters that could be the killer? I feel good. Like
the Randy stuff was fun. I love the discussion in the classroom was really great. That was super fun, for a pop culture kind of overview, of these film students at the time. Yeah, it was fun. The Randy stuff was funny, if a bit goofy, but I liked it. I liked the setup and the cast, and it was just like, oh man, there's a lot of people to kill, but it was good. I think that was the part. There were things that I liked about it kind of structurally, but the whole thing just didn't really fire on all cylinders the way that one seemed to. It sagged a little bit here. It had more of an ebb and flow, I think, to the pacing than the first one did. Maybe. I don't know.
My opinion is, and the reason I broke it up kind of by the hours is I feel like the first hour, you're right. The first hour is kind of trying to get its footing, and it's got some good stuff, but it also has some stuff that hasn't aged well. And there's not a ton of killing. It's a lot of setup. My opinion is the second hour is fire. It's on the level of Scream 1. The second hour, once it really kind of, we figure out what it is and who our main characters are, and Ghostface starts killing people, like all of the stuff with Courtney Cox and David Arquette in the school doing the research is great. And there's like the scene where they have to climb over Ghostface in the car is an all-timer. That
was really well constructed, and that's a very Scream at the Screen sort of sequence, the crawling over the body. It's just like, my wife Elise and I were both screaming, like, pull the mask off, kill him right now. Like, it did a great job of like exactly what it was supposed to do. Right. And that was a nerve-wracking sequence and a frustrating sequence, but deliberately. So I would think,
Yeah, Cameron, I don't disagree that that second hour, I think around that time, once it, especially when she's in the play onward, when she kind of freaks out during the play, it does not let up, I think, in that last
the production design for the play was also killer. I loved all of the stuff around the play, and I'm really glad they put the finale in that setting because it's such a the production design was killer. It's really good. And I love the way the sequence where Ghostface is appearing in the masked kind of chorus. That was really good. That was very, very cool. It's probably one of my favorite parts of the film.
Well, I love the way it uses what we know from One kind of against us, whether it's bringing in Liev Schreiber and is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Or can she trust her boyfriend? And like all of that stuff is like weaponized here in the last hour. And like, I love that Cotton Weary, they're so good with that character where they bring him in and he's like, they make him seem shady enough to where he could be a bad guy, but he really hasn't done anything. And like he's just a little creepy, but like the second hour for me is Scream 1 level good. I love the reveal at the end. I think the two killers are also two of my all-time favorite actors, which probably doesn't hurt. But the reveal makes sense, and the who and the why and the how, and like it just, that's the thing about Scream is like so much hinges on the ultimate reveal, and you know it kind of depends on the movie. But this one I thought nailed it.
We pretty much figured out. You figured out the two killers pretty early on because of the phone while a Ghostface is entering the scene, right? So that's like, okay, there's two killers this time because
I think when they're in the frat house.
But Mickey was clear the moment that they were in the viewing room, in the like lecture room, and the footage popped up of like things that they hadn't seen, you know? It's like, oh, well, fuck, it's Mickey.
The other guy with the camcorder.
That guy carries a camera around all the time. So this was less stingy with the incriminating stuff, you know, like it was easier to figure out earlier.
Well, I also think
by this point you're looking, you know, I knew what to expect. So we're on the hunt, you know, as we're watching it for the killer.
I also love that Randy basically kind of soft figures out he's the killer, but then realizes it implicates the other two, and they're just like, fuck, never mind. Yeah. We don't want to talk about it. Like in that scene, it's so good. But yeah, who the killers are is probably easier to figure out as you're watching.
Also, having seen Timothy Oliphant's career trajectory, the moment he's on screen is like, well, this guy's a contender.
Well, he also seems the creepiest in the movie. You're just watching it, you're like, this guy's creeping me out a little, and he's not even wearing a mask.
He's, as an actor, he's really good at, look at his work on like Deadwood and Justified. He's really good at being scary, but also really sweet. There's like, he's a perfect actor for that role when you think about it, because there's the moment where he's like, we're here for you, like, you know, and that's really, it feels very genuine in that moment. But knowing what he as an actor does, it's like, yeah, well, this guy's capable of being a complete psychopath. So,
well, it's funny too, because like earlier in his career, he played more skeezy characters. I think ultimately he became like an anti-hero, in the stuff you talked about. But earlier in his career and stuff like Go and Girl Next Door, he was in this movie, he's playing like skeezier characters. So I think like he definitely can do creepy. As he's aged into more of like just like a good looking middle-aged, you know, politician looking guy. But back then he definitely looked like someone you'd buy drugs from somewhere. So
I thought a few times.
Yeah. And then the bringing Billy's mom back was just such a great idea. And like her character was basically like, how do we out Gale was like her whole character. I love every bit of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
This one does a good job again, like we talked about with the multiple red herrings, though, be it Cotton Weary, wrong place, wrong time a lot, showing up with the bloody hands even late on. Heavy on Derek the boyfriend, as played by Jerry O'Connell.
Yeah.
A little too, overboard. But I would argue that they did I'm sorry, not Billy, but the guy, Mickey, Oliphant's character was so much like Billy that I thought that in itself was a red herring. I mean, obviously I've seen it, I know with hindsight, but I'm saying like if somebody's watching this cold, he's almost too much like Billy early on that you're like, it can't be him again. So I think they almost made it that way. But yeah, even the sorority girls are teased. Her friend is teased because they keep mentioning it's going to be a white male. It's going to be a white male. Making you think, oh, maybe it's not. So yeah, once again, I thought they did a good job establishing, like you said, in that first hour, so many people could be.
You know, the smartest character in this whole movie is the cameraman, who's like, fuck this in particular. I am out. No, thank you. This is not for me.
Yeah.
I love that dude was just like, I'm done with this. I'm out of here. And he just shows back up at the end and is like, all right, I'm good now. Let's go make something. Like that guy gets it. He survives a horror movie on principle.
He survived on Duncan, just like America.
Oh. Boo this man and his dead.
Oh, he showed up with the product placement.
Yeah, that's true.
He did. Yeah. So you liked it. So you're
I did. I know. We both really enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but we were tremendously entertained. We weren't disappointed, but we were like, yeah, that was really fun. That was good. But I was more impressed with, I think, just because I think seeing it all put together after, so much. So I don't know if it was just I'm seeing it too close to the sort of template, that established it. So yeah, I'd say strong B to B plus for this one.
It was like less than a year between Scream 1 and Scream 2, so you aren't so far off from where the audience saw it. So Scream was 96, Scream 2 was 97, and I believe, not to get ahead of ourselves, but I think part of the reason there were some problems with Scream 3 and that it doesn't, spoilers, it doesn't land for everybody like the first two. I assume you probably know that. I think it's got its merits, and then people are coming back around on it. But I think that's another one that they tried to churn out 10 months after the second one. And I think they just it's hard to make them 3 movies that quickly, that well. So
I'm approaching 3 with I'm imagining an ABC kind of rating, descending as they go on. So hopefully I'm
if nothing else, it's entertain. I think you'll be entertained by it. The running joke was that Scream 3 is the movie Scream 1 was making fun of.
Right.
So we'll see. I'm excited for you to see it, if only because you have to see Courtney Cox's bangs. Gail has arguably the worst bangs in the history of film. Yeah. So that should be enough to get you to watch.
Streaks comment was really good. Dewey's Ice Streaks comment was really...
I love how sad Dewey was that she sold him down the river. It's just Dewey is such a... I'm beating the drum again, but
Nah, he's wonderful. He's really...
there's just no subtext with Dewey. He's just a sweet guy who just keeps getting thrown in the shitty situation. And also, we'd be remiss. I know we're probably, as this is supposed to be a shorter mini episode, we're probably running low on time, but we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Dewey's reveal at the end of still being alive. One of the great moments in all Scream movies, when you find out Dewey is still with us at the end of 2, and Gail runs. She drops the microphone and goes to Dewey, and story be damned, and that's the start of a beautiful romance. And you'll see Alex Cuervo as we move on to 3. You're going to see.
Cool.
It's going to be a thing.
They killed Randy, so they were showing in the next movie hey, not everybody's has plot armor, as the kids say nowadays. So yeah, even Dewey seemed dead until that last moment. You forget about him as you're watching the wind down.
Yeah, I wasn't really that worried because I know he's
Cameron hasn't shown about him.
This long after the fact, he has basically plot armor insofar as just having seen the posters for the other films.
But you didn't. But I do agree with Shawn in that you didn't know that at the time. There was no reason to think Dewey wasn't dead in that moment.
Yeah,
which is why that reveal is so great, and it's also so beautiful for as much as I talk about Dewey's greatness, Gail's character is really she manages to toe that line between super bitch and not awful. She is what she is, and she's me first, but she's relatable enough, and it seems like that and the stuff with Dewey that makes her relatable.
So I want to see your notebook with all your Gail Dewey fanfic drafts.
Oh, I would love to make a Gail Dewey. I would love to make a Gail Dewey movie that's a spin-off of the Scream series. Don't threaten me with a good time.
A sitcom, like a Christmas special.
It's Gail Dewey and their 2 cats. Cotton and Weary. They're 2 cats.
I'd watch that.
That's pretty good. Too. That's pretty. That's the cat names are
I will say before we jump out of here, we have in the first Scream episode we started talking about box office, and all of us can't read properly, and it's actually my mistake for doing some copy paste. But when we read Box Office Mojo, Scream being 26 million, that was only the 2 weeks it was out in 1996. It was actually did make 100 domestic. We had fudged that, so apologies. That's a correction. But yes, it was obviously a huge hit to the point that Williamson even had a 5-page outline for the sequel when he was pitching the original script, hoping to entice some folks. So that's why this one was able to take off so quickly thereafter. Yeah, literally a year later. It was one of those things. It was one of the first movies where the internet leaked the ending. And I don't know if you guys remember this at all, but the spoilers got out of who was the killer to where they started rewriting and filming multiple endings. And that became almost a common thing in the late 90s and the 2000s with internet leaks. But this was one of the first victims of that, where it was revealed who the killers were. And it made Miramax and Dimension and all scramble and do some edits.
Well, anything that makes Harvey Weinstein angry is a friend of mine. So good on you, internet. Way to take him down a notch.
But yeah, similar. Cameron, we'll get to when we talk about 3, but I do think there was a similar thing where there was a treatment maybe that Williamson just didn't fully flesh out. So I'm glad Cuervo did like this. I don't think he's wrong. The ABCB seems to be kind of like most of Paper Street's thoughts on the first 4 movies, ABCB-ish.
I think that's most of the world's thoughts on the first 4 Scream movies is ABCB. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see if Cuervo continues to follow
He's
that
getting
track.
a positive assessment nowadays, as every movie does. If somebody watches at the right time and youth, they'll look back on it positively. So we'll see.
The thing about a slump, kind of, if you're viewing that now, it's sort of in again, we talked about this in the first one, in the sort of prestige television world we live in now, committing to a long watch like this. I'm not waiting a year for a new Scream movie to come out and then be disappointed before, So if it's a C, big deal,
that'll help you there. And I do think one of the reasons Scream has had the success it's had is because it hasn't had that F movie.
Right.
Like it keeps. Every movie's a little different. Everything lands a little different, but no Scream movie has been a franchise killer. And so we'll keep getting them. And Scream 3, for as much shit as it took at the time, because like you said, people had waited a year for something on the level of Scream 1 and 2, which are classics. Yeah, it wasn't that, but it is a good time. And I think people are going back to it and saying like, oh, there's some real positives here. It tries to be a little too trendy and yada, yada, yada. I won't get into anything beyond that, but like,
don't color my
I don't want to color your you've already decided it's a C. So I don't know how much I could color, but I do. I'm excited to watch that one again and chat on that one. And Shawn, you got anything else to say, or should we?
My last thought was just the one note I wrote down was nothing says late 1990s like Sarah Michelle Gellar being killed and cutting to an Everclear song.
Oh my God, I loved it. And a Collective Soul song.
A Collective Soul song as the end credits.
There were some big groans here in our home when
I hate for this.
It was more 90s than the last movie.
Oh, very. I had completely forgotten that Sarah Michelle Gellar was in this because she's in, spoiler warning, she's in I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Right.
And she's like a huge part of that. So I had like forgotten. So she did like this, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and The Grudge, like kind of within a quick 1, 2, 3. She became quite the final girl. But yeah, she's just kind of tacked in there like Joshua Jackson a little bit, where she doesn't really have much to do with the story.
Well, she's got a lot more to do than Josh Jackson did.
And Portia de Rossi, who just kind of goes around standing next to Rebecca Gayheart. That's like her whole job is to just stand next to Rebecca Gayheart.
Well, I mean, they were well directed because they definitely had an unsettling presence whenever they appeared.
Yeah, they just wanted you to join their sorority. Is that so wrong?
Also, it was nice to see David Warner show up and class up the joint for a quick minute too.
Wait, who the hell's David Warner?
Oh God, you awful cinephile.
Wait, who?
He's the acting coach. He's the British.
Oh, yeah. He's great. Also, David Arquette's father is the police chief.
Yeah.
The father of the Arquette clan is the police chief, which is why I asked. I thought that's who you were talking about when you said David Warner. But no, David Warner's great. I've seen him in a bunch of stuff too.
Yes. You have seen him in Ninja Turtles Part 2. Secret of the Use.
Yeah. Oh,
among many other more prestigious movies. But anyway, wrap it up, Cam.
All right. Well, let's move on to Scream 3. We're going to go off and send Alex Cuervo on his way, make him watch Scream 3, and we will be back with more goodness.
Onward and downward.
Indeed.
Right? This ends with your wife also guesting to like give her final wrap up.
Yeah, she made.
Okay.
That would be good. Yeah, she should pop in for that.
I'm here for that.
All right, there you have Cuervo's fresh at the time thoughts on Part 2, which I do still think is the second best one myself, although we'll talk later on how it's kind of on par with 4. And do agree with Cam in hindsight that last leg of it, helped by the Oldie and Metcalf of it all, is about as good as anything in the franchise. Couple notes on 2. It took in 101 million plus at the box office, along with 71 million internationally, making for a total take of 172 million and change. Craven had some notable difficulties getting an R rating from the MPAA with this one too, sending 8 different cuts to them, eventually requiring the direct intervention of Dimensions film founder, Shithead Harvey's brother, Bob Weinstein, to pressure or obtain, if you will, the necessary R rating without significantly cutting down the film. And while Marco Beltrami returned to compose the score for Scream 2, that big choral number for the macabre play that we mentioned was a late edition track by none other than Danny Elfman. It's funny, too, because excerpts from Hans Zimmer's 1996 film Broken Arrow also appear in this film, an instance that became an all too common thing in years since, where temp tracks got so used to being heard by the editor, by the director, and so on, that they either kept the temp tracks or the composer would just completely mimic them. So the Broken Arrow bits actually continue through some of the sequels, if I'm not mistaken, too. And now let's see what Alex Cuervo thought of Scream 3, the most disliked of the original few, it seems, by a decent margin. Welcome back again. To quote the film in question we're about to cover, looks like Stab 3 is back in production. We are now talking with Cuervo about Scream 3, set 3 years after Part 2, which was 2 years after the first film, finding Sidney living in isolation and working as a crisis counselor. Again, we'll start with Cuervo. Just overall thoughts, reactions. Did this movie do the ABC thing as predicted? How'd you feel about it?
So this film definitely benefited from my lower expectations. So going into it, expecting, the ABC kind of grade, it benefited immensely from that, because it's actually really fun. I think the plot, all of them, the killer's motivation is pretty fucking ridiculous. After it's all said and done, you're just like, wait, what? That was why? Although Elise, my wife, made the great point that, like, oh no, men kill people for more stupid reasons than this all the time. And I was like, shit.
Elise is so wise. Elise is so wise.
Point taken. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I fucking love Parker Posey. So like, and I thought my fear was, because Parker Posey on the poster was that she was going to die in the cold open. I was like, okay, I love Parker Posey. Actually, yesterday was her birthday as well, which is extra cool. Elise pointed that out. So I was delighted that Parker Posey was going to be in this, but I was terrified that we were going to lose her in the cold open. So I was relieved that she stuck around. And she's got such a kind of feminine Nick Cage energy about her. I just think she's wonderful. I know a lot of people find her annoying, but I just think she's delightful. And I was very happy.
Every minute of Parker Posey in this movie.
Yeah, she's so good.
He is having a great time.
And she's riffing a lot too. Like when she jumps up into Patrick Warburton's arms as that scene is like cutting away. It's just like she totally just added that. She just did that,
Yeah, I think your description of this movie as fun is probably the right way to go about it. It's like, to me, Scream 3 has always been like the ultimate mixed bag. A movie that posits, is there too much Creed? To which the world decided very quickly thereafter, yes, there is. But yeah, it's nonsensical in a lot of different places, but it is having a good time, and the characters are having a good time. And so like, you just kind of roll with it, and you see Jay and Silent Bob, and you're like, I guess this is just what the 90s was. And I just have to like push through this. But yeah, there's like a decent movie in there, and you just have to get past some of the crust.
Or those bangs, my God, Courtney Cox. Those were really jarring right out of the gate. I was just like, what the fuck?
That is probably the most memorable thing about Scream 3. You talk to people about Scream 3, the first thing they talk about
their single biggest regret.
No one remembers the cold open. No one remembers who the killer is, but everyone remembers Courtney Cox's bang.
There was a minute there in the late 90s when this was being shot where everybody just went with it, and everybody was like, oh, that looks horrible. But all actresses seem to have like a bang face. But new additions. And you guys mentioned Parker Posey, Patrick Warburton, Patrick Dempsey, Scott Foley, Jenny McCarthy, Emily Mortimer, who I completely did not remember being in this, and Lance Henriksen, and Courtney Cox's bangs.
Lance Henriksen, who, by the way, has been killed by Ghostface, the Terminator, and the Alien. So just putting that out there.
Yeah.
Royalty.
He's and the Predator, right?
Oh, and the Predator. Yeah.
Those are the three. Ghostface is the fourth one. Yeah.
Wow, that is a thing. That's
you mentioned crazy. Jay and Silent Bob. There's also Roger Corman cameo in the beginning.
Oh shit!
Carrie Fisher playing
that.
Not Carrie Fisher. He's talking
Carrie
with,
Fisher. That was great. Yes.
He's talking with the director and the other studio exec and John Milton, the funnily named Lance Henriksen character.
He's basically playing Bob Shea.
I missed it.
That.
Well, let's talk about that real quick, because like you mentioned that they went a little more comedic, a little more fun. And it's because this is one of those movies where they reduced the horror and the violence on purpose, because this was being shot just after Columbine. So they had to do a lot of rewrites. Rewrites plagued the production. But what's funny is they kind of address it in that conversation. There's a few times where they address things like there's a bunch of like the Weinstein stigma on this movie as well, where like I think by this point Wes Craven hated him, and they even joke about how people are sleeping with the filmmakers, the directors, the producers. first. But yeah, they kind of addressed that with the Corman and Henderson conversation too about like violence isn't causing this. So a lot of meta stuff on top of the meta in this one.
Yeah, and also Kevin Williamson has spoken about this movie, and like they were trying to move so fast that he basically wrote the first draft of a script, sent it in, and then was off doing Dawson's Creek and other stuff. And they basically just he couldn't do the movie because of timing, and they had to hire Aaron Kruger, who was super hot at the time. And it didn't click in the way that I think if they had given Williamson more time, it may have clicked. It did. Like, it doesn't, it's not that it's bad. Again, it's like the ultimate mixed bag. It just doesn't always feel like Scream, and it doesn't always feel smart like Scream. There's a lot of times where people just do. This is why they say that Scream 3 is the movie Scream 1 was making fun of, because it's like you're in this house and Dewey and Gale are like, figure out that the killer's there, and they immediately are just like, Dewey's like, here's a gun, let's split up. So what
exactly.
doing?
Yeah.
Like stuff like that happens throughout the movie. That's just. Yeah, it just feels.
They should know, especially having been through 2 of these now. They should know better. You know, they're just making incredibly stupid calls, especially Dewey, who's seems
especially worthless in this movie.
Right. Although his is that a threat sequence with Patrick Dempsey was really excellent Dewey moment, which would only work if you'd been with this character for the amount of time that we have at this point.
Well, I think one of the things, and I'm on record saying this is one of the things I really love about the series, but I think one of the things that works in this movie is the Dewey and Gale side story. There's just something about those two people on screen that just they work. And like they just have electric chemistry. And so like all of the Dewey and Gale side stuff in this movie is super interesting and almost more interesting than the actual A plot, which is like, and the other, spoiler warning for anybody who hasn't seen the movie, but because there's only one killer in this one, it's the story. There's a lot less killer and it's a lot less complex.
They do they are so relentless in trying to pin it on Patrick Dempsey's detective that it gets exhausting to the point where it's like you're already like halfway through the movie. You're just like, well, they're clearly making the case that it's him, and they keep reinforcing it. So it can't be him.
And
but the problem is that in the previous ones, there was so many possibilities. And in this one, he was kind of the only possible suspect. He was the only real suspicious person.
They didn't do a good job of flushing out. The other suspect was Emily Mortimer, but they didn't do a good job of fleshing out her character. And so, they spent so much time making you think it's Patrick Dempsey that you almost, by the end of the movie, could just by who's alive, figure out that it's Roman, which is why I think they just kind of aw-shucksed it. And it wasn't like a huge reveal. He just takes the mask off. He's like, surprise, it's me. Like, the surprise just doesn't hit at all in this one.
I wasn't expecting the possibility of it. I mean, I was surprised that it was him, but I didn't care.
Really?
Yeah,
I was surprised it was him?
Yeah, because they showed the scene where she opens the coffin and he's there with the knife. I mean, clearly it was faked, but
wait a second. We're gonna have to sidebar here, Shawn. Alex Cuervo, you have not seen enough horror movies to know that when the character is dead, but you did not see him get dead, that character is not actually dead. Is this your first time with a horror movie?
Yeah, it is. This is a new genre to me. I'm just really getting into it lately. Apparently.
You're not wrong, though. Emily Mortimer's character was the only one, not nearly as many red herrings this time around.
Yeah,
but the other, like Jenny McCarthy was obviously not the. I hate to say it, but like you talk about a token black character, the guy that was the fill-in for Randy playing Ricky had no character whatsoever and just kind of dies unceremoniously.
His character was that I think I'm going to die at any moment. That was his character. He's the guy who's going to die.
And then the stand-in for Dewey actually had like Steve Zahn energy. I feel like they asked Steve Zahn to play that part because the guy just kind of was like channeling him in a way, but he didn't really have much to do either when all of a sudden.
He would have been an interesting red herring if they had built him up more.
Yeah,
but they were too interested in other weird side stuff like the Jay and Silent Bob thing or like the Randy's sister, who we still don't know why the hell she was even there.
That's right.
Like Randy's sister,
Wiener. What's her name? The actress's name?
Heather Matarazzo.
Right.
Who actually pops back up later in the series if we continue. But she's great and I love her as an actor. But like she just shows up, hands him a tape, and no one's like, "Hey, why are you here in Los Angeles on a film studio lot?" Like, no one asks that question. They just sit down and watch the tape. But
I can headcanon why. Cotton Weary died. He was the guy that was supposed to have the cameo with the real connection to Woodsboro, and now she's the new cameo with the real connection to Woodsboro, maybe. But yeah, I mean, that's me putting things together that were definitely not there. But yeah,
did not expect
no
Cotton
explanation
to be taken out
Yeah, it's funny. Like I had seen Scream 3 not that long ago, and I couldn't remember what the cold open was. And then when I got into it and remembered what it was, I was like, oh yeah, I actually kind of liked this cold open. Like I was surprised by that. I didn't see that coming the first time through. And I think that's an interesting place to go when a third Scream movie is killing someone that we actually know.
Yeah.
That was kind of playing against.
It was unexpected. Yeah, again, because I thought it was going to be Parker Posey. I liked it probably would have gotten insufferable after a point, but the 100% cotton era, cotton weary I don't know that it had long legs, but it had a little bit more. It could have lasted the movie, and then maybe he dies, at some point in the movie. But it was an interesting thing to do with that character, I think.
Yeah, I'm thinking a Cotton prequel, where between 2 and 3, we followed Cotton and just see how he got to become Los Angeles' number one, like Sally Jesse Raphael knockoff. Yeah. I think that's the thing we need to see. What do you think, Shawn? Start writing?
Yes, how he went from polyester blend to 100% cotton. I second that. I love the billboard campaign. You see when he's sitting in traffic in LA, 100% cotton everywhere.
I also love that he was like, the movie posits that you can't get anywhere in Los Angeles unless you try really hard, at which point you can get home in LA traffic in like a minute and a half.
Oh, no, there was some accuracy there. He's stuck by the Hollywood Bowl. That checks out. Someone later on mentions they're on the 405. They'll never get there. That checks out. So if you know LA, those things check out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that this movie kind of brought to the equation was the whole we can now rip anyone's voice technology. And that was basically the entirety of the surprise and how we can't figure out who's who and what's going on or whatever. They went to that over and over and over again of like, is it the killer? Is it actually them talking? Who knows?
Yeah, they really relied on that voice effect thing. I will say a little bit of a weird logic leap here is in part 1, Billy holds it up to his face, does the effect. And this one, you see them holding it up to their face. So am I to believe that the thing is stuck in the ghost-faced mouthpiece or are they always holding it? It doesn't really make sense, if you think about it too hard. But I know.
Yeah, do you have to reach up into the mask and know which,
are you always
button
holding
to toggle? Yeah. It was a little weird. And also the voice capture on the dead mother.
Well, also there's some weirdness with the dead mother too, because at one point Ghostface is the dead. This goes back to the fact that 3 stops making sense to some degree. But Ghostface shows up as the dead mother, exactly how Sidney's been dreaming the dead mother. But how the hell does Ghostface know how Sidney's been dreaming the dead mother?
Right.
Stuff like that.
In the body bag kind of get up.
The sheet with whatever on it. There's a lot of stuff like that where you're just like, if you think too hard, this whole thing unravels.
Yeah. Well, so the set, the whole house set is something that Craven added in the middle too. It's funny because I think you said if Williamson had more time, I could see that have been the finale, in the fake Sydney house kind of would have made more sense probably. But that whole kind of middle sequence where she's in the set and he's chasing her around, they mentioned oh, you weren't supposed to see that set of your dead mom where they found your dead mom. So she knew the mom was under a blanket that was bloody. And I think he was just spooking her by standing up with it. But then he shows up again with that blanket at the very end at Milton's mansion.
Also, since we're talking about things that didn't make any sense, we're on Stab 3. Yet everything in the soundstage would lead you to believe we're watching Stab 1.
Right, exactly.
Everything, all the houses, nothing has happened. Why? We still haven't done the laupry in Sidney's parents' room.
Yeah, they were recreating Rose McGowan's death with the Jenny McCarthy character.
Yeah, there's a ton of that, but why are they recreating that stuff? What? It's supposed to be the third movie. We're supposed to have moved on from there. So I don't it's kind of another weird logic. Again, don't think too hard. We're on a third one. It's the weakest Scream. Let's spend our time talking about the Queen Parker Posey.
Yeah,
Stab 1 only covered the first 30 pages of Gail's book. It did Drew Barrymore kill. It did a couple others, and they padded it out with some stuff. So there's your headcanon for that.
Right, Shawn, you're really working to try to make this thing work. I respect that.
So were they. They were trying.
Yeah.
Were they?
Maybe they weren't. I thought you led me to believe that Liev Schreiber was going to be on board for more of them. But I guess this was the intention, right? This was supposed to be this was going to close out the trilogy. When they made it, they weren't.
Yeah, they were not
imagining Scream 4 because Scream 4 is 10 years later, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the start of the arguably what you call the legacy sequel nowadays, because it's surprising because this did do box office as well, that they really did close it out and didn't try to pursue the next year or two the way they had been doing.
Well, I think it's because Craven and Williamson didn't want to do it. And so they would have had to completely go back to the well the way they did for Scream 5.
Also, the cast was probably getting more lucrative offers by this point, the central cast.
I don't know how much they were wanting to make Scream 4. It had kind of run its course, but
clearly they were running. Yeah, I mean they were flailing, I think, to sort of keep the narrative.
I don't think to me it's less about I think there was plenty of runway for more interesting movies. The problem is they were trying to make these things once a year, and you saw it with Saw. And anytime you try to make movies once a year, you just have no time for anything. I mean, they didn't have time to bring Williamson back to write because he was on another thing. You just have to spit something out and pray for the best. Yeah. If they had taken their time, I think Scream 4 and Scream 5 have shown that there's plenty of legs for this series if you do it right. If you're trying to make a once a year box office dent, then that does not equate quality filmmaking. So
with the trilogy too, they did cover the bases of every possible connection to the mom. They did kind of run through the person she cheated with, the half brother. They did all the kind of obvious reveals to tie into this trilogy. But I know you love that love story, but them trying to wrap it up at the end, I do think that whole proposal was not as earned as you think. But you've also seen them in multiple movies past this. But they still start each movie hating it. Yeah, go ahead.
They telegraphed the brother very early in the film, as soon as it was revealed that she had this retcon, 2-year failed Hollywood starlet kind of misfire. It's it's going to be Sydney's illegitimate brother. But they were
another reason I was shocked that you didn't put together who the killer was.
Well, no, I thought Patrick Dempsey was going to be revealed. I mean, I think it was funneling you towards Patrick Dempsey being revealed as being her brother,
Yes. I mean, that's clearly what they wanted you to believe. He'd been
exactly.
in LA. He lived in LA his whole life, and it wanted you to believe it was Patrick Dempsey, which is why it was never going to be Patrick Dempsey.
Right. Exactly.
And to me, what's his name? Scott Foley, who went on to I don't know what, but he was really hot at the time after Felicity. He was the only suspect left standing for me. Especially once some people started getting knocked off, and I don't know. He also He doesn't totally work for me as the killer. I don't know.
No, I was not.
He didn't have big Tim Oliphant energy.
No, it was not a satisfying villain at all.
Yeah. The first 4 villains: Stu, Billy, Tim Oliphant, whose character's name I can't remember, and Laurie Metcalf, Billy's mom. They all 4 had good crazy person energy.
Yeah.
And Scott Foley, he's 2 boy next door and 2 regular guy. He didn't have that he didn't do the crazy eyes like Billy and some of the other guys. So
and also went overboard with his many years long plan. It was so elaborate that they even said he was the one coaxing Billy and other people all these years.
Yeah, he also big time Bond villain at the end. He had 5 minutes.
He was the author of All Her Pain and a half brother. Oh my God, it is. It's just what's his name, Inspector Blofeld. Sorry if you guys are behind on James Bond movies. One of the worst reveals ever.
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember.
Oh, hold on.
Are we going to do a Spectre?
Are we going to do a series of Alex Cuervo watching every James Bond movie now?
Have you seen any of the Daniel Craig? Well, let's find out. Has Cuervo seen any of the Daniel Craig Bond movies?
Yes, I've seen 2 of them. I think I've seen 2 of them. I like Craig as Bond.
But what
was that espionage movie he did before he got the Bond gig, where he basically was auditioning for Bond?
Layer Cake.
Layer Cake. That was a really good movie. I was there, and of course everybody was like, he'd be a great James Bond.
Yeah.
And then anyway, of course.
Yeah. Long and short of it, his 5-movie run, which spanned a good amount of time, they do a tie it all together kind of thing to button it up, and it's the last 2 movies are a little frustrating in that regard.
Then no, I checked out.
Shawn, you want a hot take?
Go ahead.
Skyfall is the greatest Bond movie ever made.
It's not that hot of a take as a lot of people feel that way. I disagree. It's the greatest Dark Knight influenced movie in the wake of Dark Knight, but I don't think it's the best Bond movie. I think it's a very good movie, though.
What do you think is the best Bond movie? Not to get too far side tangented here, but...
Well, again, best movie that has James Bond or best James Bond movie? Those are 2 different things.
Is that a Casino Royale reference? It has to be, right?
No, I'm saying best James Bond movie might be Casino Royale.
Yeah, I know. Whatever. Dealer's choice. Just pick something. We've already spent too much time talking about this.
Yes, let's go back to...
no, you have to pick one. You have to tell me what...
No, I think Casino Royale is the best James Bond movie as far as
a Casino Royale, right?
No. You're talking about the Woody Allen, David Niven movie. No, I'm talking about the first one that launched Daniel Craig.
Oh, you think that's better than Skyfall?
I think Skyfall falls apart when it turns into Home Alone in the last third act, but that's just me. Also, you break down Anton Chigurh's not Anton Chigurh, the other character Javier Bardem plays in that movie. His plan is so stupid when you think about it's crazier than Scott Foley's in this movie.
Well, he's a Bond villain. Of course, his plan.
I know, but the whole and also the wake of all the villains getting caught on purpose. All those movies in a row that had that happen too.
A few moments later.
For those of you who were just listening and not watching, that whole conversation, Alex Cuervo was leaning back in his chair, drinking out of a coffee cup. Like he could not give two shits about what was going on.
I don't give two shits about it. It's personal preference. Skyfall is very, very good, and it's arguably one of the most beautiful looking movies and beautiful Bond movies for sure.
Good. Yeah.
So yeah, back to
what were we talking about again? Why are we here?
I want to ask Cuervo. Cuervo, do you remember the Kevin Bacon TV series, The Following?
Oh, vaguely, yeah.
Some notes from Wiki and stuff I found. So Williamson, again, had pitched parts 2 and 3 as little outlines when he was trying to sell part 1. And he initially had 3 be the Killers be a stab fan club of Woodsboro kids. And they even reached out to Matthew Lillard to possibly be still alive and in charge of it. And the final twist would see Sidney walked into the house after Ghostface had killed everyone, except they all stood up and none of them are actually dead. And they planned the whole thing. So that was something that very much got scrapped because of Columbine, to bring it back into any kind of high school relations. Shit. But he ended up kind of adapting that story for The Following
to become okay. And that was James Purefoy. Yeah. The serial killer cult. There was a cult of serial killers. Yeah, I actually liked the first. That went 2 seasons or 3 seasons.
I didn't make it past season 1. I think he helped either adapt it or bring it to TV.
I didn't know that was Williamson either, but I did like the show.
Yeah, it was okay. It got a little silly towards the end. It kind of buckled under its own weight, as I recall. But good cast. I mean, I thought it was pretty good. James Purefoy was, worked as
always like that guy's
also charismatic serial killer leader.
Yeah, he was good. I liked him quite a bit on that. Also, I don't know if this counts for trivia for this movie or the next one, but we're going to do them both, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Patrick Dempsey, who we see kind of show up at the end in Nev Campbell or Sydney's house with popcorn ready to watch a movie. He was originally going to come back for Scream 4, which we're going to be doing next, but they couldn't make it work with his Transformers movie that he was shooting, and so they don't bring Patrick Dempsey back for Scream 4.
Darker the Moon. Yes, I think he was in part 3 where they level Chicago. That was when I bailed on the Transformer franchise. You guys want to talk about that? Cuervo will fall out of his chair.
Yeah, that's a bridge too far. But they definitely
part 2 might be one of the worst big budget movies of all time.
Which they did some filming here in Taylor on 1, right? They did some location stuff here.
I have no idea.
I believe. Anyway, that's I didn't watch it.
I think my point there, though, was I think the original idea was that Patrick Dempsey was going to stay kind of Nev Campbell's love interest, and that was going to be like a running through line of the movie. But because he chose Transformers over Scream, which turned out to be a big mistake, he has not been seen in the series since.
Well, if he chose so much as he was already locked in or ran long. Speaking of his character, that's another thing that Wes Craven, to his credit, there was so much screwiness happening with the writing and writing pages on the day. Not only did they reshoot the entirety of the ending because apparently Sidney defeated Scott Foley a little too easily, they added the scene of her getting shot, so you'd believe maybe there was something going on there. Although they teased that she also grabbed the bulletproof vest when she was in the police station.
I don't think anyone on this movie knows how a bulletproof vest works. Let's just put it out there. To people, the bulletproof vest works like a video game in this movie. If you're wearing one, people can shoot you and you don't even fucking feel it.
Yeah, Nev Campbell would still get the wind taken out of her for this as close range as he got her in the chest at worst. But yeah, they wanted you to believe Sidney could possibly die too for a minute. But yeah, they reshot that entire thing a couple months after the movie was in the can. But also the addition of Mark Kincaid, the Dempsey character, he just totally disappears at one point, and Wes Craven's like, that can't happen. We have to bring him back. That's so weird that the detective wouldn't play into the finale again. So again, wise decision to bring him back. And like we said, thinking it was wrapping it up in a bow, not only do they get engaged, Dewey and Gale, but they have him alive and kind of with Sidney possibly as the tease as they fade to black.
I thought the engagement scene was very sweet.
It was.
Thank you,
the dialogue in that
I appreciate it.
No, it was really sweet. His let's hope we're wrong, or what was the?
Yeah, he was basically
his reasoning was
it's not going to work. I know it's not going to work, but we don't know everything, so let's hope we're wrong. I love everything about those two characters. I think they are what makes Scream great. Dewey and Gale are what makes Scream work. I truly believe that. everything. Like they're the best thing about Scream 3, along with Parker Posey, who is
so. Let's queue up Scream 4 because I'm looking at the cast right now, and holy shit, this cast is ridiculous.
Oh yeah, this is everyone who was hot circa like 2010.
Right.
Jesus, but
I've forgotten all of them without naming it. I mean, I'll watch it with you guys. We're not going to wait 10 years like they did and just do this down the road. We're going to
I'm excited.
Right around.
I'm actually really stoked about the jump forward.
Well, I will let you know, Alex Cuervo, since I just had this conversation with him yesterday. Friend of the show, Paper Street partner and president, czar, whatever he calls himself, Aaron B. Koontz, says that Scream 4 is his second favorite Scream movie. So
after 1, I would assume.
After 1, yeah.
Okay.
It's, which is not a super hot take. I mean, a lot of people think Scream 4 is the second best one, but I think you'll be excited about Scream 4.
Yeah, I'm pumped for it because I felt like, I was talking to Ben Moody yesterday, director. I'm working on a short with him, and I was telling him about this, what we were doing, and that I was going to do Scream 3, and I said, yeah, my expectations are low, but I've heard 4 is good, so I guess I just have to suck it up and get through this one so that I can get to 4. And he said, eat your vegetables.
It's going to be a good one. Also, we need to have Ben Moody on the show and talk about find an action movie that Ben Moody hasn't seen. That would be fun. I'd love to do that. Let's watch Scream 4.
Okay, that sounds great. I'm pumped for it.
Awesome.
Nice. We'll be back with that one in a minute.
Dun, 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 dun.
And there we have Mr. Cuervo's thoughts on Scream 3. Some notes on this trilogy capper. Upon its opening weekend, the film set a record for the widest opening ever in the United States and Canada, being released on a then unprecedented 3,467 screens. This one grossed $34.7 million during its opening weekend, which was the best to-date opening weekend for the month of February. It also beat its predecessor, Scream 2, for a record opening weekend for a horror film, and went on to gross $89 million plus in the U.S. and Canada, $72 million plus in other territories, making for a worldwide of over $161 million. And now we will jump back in with Mr. Cuervo once more to get his thoughts on an early example of the all too common anymore legacy sequel, quote unquote, in Scream 4. Well, all right, welcome back to talk the third sequel to Scream. This is the Scream 4 minisode within a normal sode, possibly. The Scream film that, after a decade since the last, fans weren't exactly clamoring for, and I think the lowest grossing entry by a wide margin proved that at the time. But here we are to get the thoughts once again of Mr. Alex Cuervo, who reluctantly agreed to not only watch the sequels, but jump on and talk about each of them with us here. So we're happy to have him back. Cuervo, how did you take to this legacy sequel before that was even really a term?
Yeah, so I have questions about that, about where it lands in the timeline of the legacy sequels. I really liked it. I mean, it's like my second favorite of this series. I liked it quite a bit. It was just really super fun. The Inception cold opens were just wonderful. There was a lot of things that I really liked about it, but I was just smiling a lot through the whole thing. It was a blast.
The cold open was basically just like, look, we've hired like 12 CW actors, so we're gonna need 6 false starts. Yeah, it was just a little all over the place. But yeah, no, it's episode 4, I guess. Scream 4 has really aged very, very well. I remember seeing it in the theater when it first came out, and I wasn't really into it, but it's been very like kind of prescient as far as like its message, and I think it was almost ahead of its time, and people weren't ready for it. But the whole people will do anything on the internet to be famous.
So the reveal, okay, first of all, as soon as Culkin appeared on screen, I was like, yeah, it's probably him.
He's kind of a creep
because he's just got that, he's got that energy about him. So it was kind of like
hold on.
Timothy Olyphant, when he showed up, I was like, yeah, he's my prime suspect. And it was the same thing here.
Were you not thrown off by the always tried and true Scream thing of like, girl gets into a fight with Ghostface leaves, 3 seconds later, boyfriend who's a suspect walks through the front door of said house? That didn't get you?
No, that did not.
Fourth straight movie.
Yeah, the fourth straight movie we've got that.
But I mean that, but that's kind of it's like an internal trope, right?
Right.
It's its own.
Scream has its own like galaxy of tropes.
I lost my train of thought with that because we went in so many different directions. But yeah, I mean, so the reveal, the Emma Roberts thing was, I didn't see that specifically coming. But I thought, like, man, Kevin Williamson like hates young people. Like at the reveal and her motivation and stuff like that, I was like, what? I think in 2010 that was like, because the like internet famous was an emerging kind of thing at that time, but now we've had it in our lives for 12, 13 years since then. And so it's kind of a tedious thing to hear somebody complaining about at this point in 2023. Sure. Do you know what I mean? It seems like I'm tired of hearing people angry at young people because of TikTok and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So it's like
it's got a little bit of old man screams at clouds going for it now. But I will say, I think Scream movies work better when they have something to say. And Scream 1 had something to say, and Scream 4 had enough time between the Scream movies that it also had something to say. And similarly to Scream 5, if you ever get around to seeing it, it had something to say. And like I think they all try to have something to say, but it can feel a little thin. And I think this one really did have an idea that it kind of where the whole movie ran through this whole idea of watching everything you do online and all of that stuff and living your life online, basically, which was kind of a new thing in 2011. I mean, people weren't really. So I saw it in the theater in 2011 and was just kind of okay with it. I didn't love it, but I do think it's aged very, very well in that it's become kind of prescient.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, there was a lot of cast. There was a lot of actors I liked in it. Alison Brie is, of course, a lot of fun always for me.
Super bitchy. Also, no reason to kill her.
But she's great at that character, right? She really does that kind of archetype really well. I thought Mary McDonnell was really underutilized. I really like her.
Yeah, she's a great actress.
So, and shout out to Anthony Anderson's death scene. It's so good.
Swinging for the fences.
He's so good. I mean, that's such a great death scene.
He and Adam Brody felt like they came over from Scream 3. Like they brought the tone of Scream 3 no one was asking for to Scream 4.
Yeah, the long line of Scream movies showing just how worthless cops, including Dewey, always are.
Yeah.
But, how did Dewey become the sheriff? Let's talk about that. How did Dewey become the sheriff? He is the worst cop ever.
Everybody else has died off. I
love him, but he is a terrible cop. And he's a terrible cop in this movie.
Williamson clearly has some beef with local, small town or medium-sized town police forces. Man, the guys, like, the sheriffs, their ineptitude led to somebody dying, and then 2 days later, they're like fooling around. They're just goofing off in front of the house. It's just like,
still.
Somebody died on your watch.
Like we didn't even replace them. Is there no one else? Do we have no one else but these two assholes who are like 23 years old? These two clowns dicking around in the car.
They were dicking around a day after someone died in the other neighboring house.
That's what I'm saying.
They were back to dicking around. Yeah.
There's no remorse whatsoever for their like complete ineptitude.
Oh yeah, it is funny that like Scream 3 went like more comedic and Scream 4 kind of went away from that, but there are pockets of Scream 4 that tried to like keep that broad comedy, like those two characters specifically. And also I think Deputy Judy dances around that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, she's sort of characterized as like the creepy suspect. She's one of the red herrings pretty early on. It is kind of fun to see her character because she was kind of super insufferable. I was like, God, I can't wait till she dies if she's not the killer. She's probably not the killer. They're leaning too hard into it, but like that means she's gonna get killed. But then when she like comes around and like helps Gail, you're like, oh, that's kind of nice. They're friends now.
You're like, I hope they become
Dewey's so worthless. Some cops got to shoot somebody. Yeah, to the point about the red herring with her, they lean in with Trevor, the ex-boyfriend, heavy again, and we've seen that both play with Skeet Ulrich, but also be subverted with Jerry O'Connell, where he wasn't in part 2. But this one again, it seemed a little too obvious, so they thankfully didn't just make it the ex-boyfriend who had the creepy vibe.
He was so cringy, though. He really he did his job.
Yeah. as we talked about how we watched these with our spouses, my wife watched 4 with me because she'd never seen it. And I will say she immediately, like you, Cuervo, pegged that one of those 2 film kids is one of them. Like, there's no doubt because of the idea that they're filming everything. Right. She thought it would be the other one because Rory seemed too obvious because he did have such a creep vibe. She thought it'd be a subversion and it'd be the friend.
But did he then? That's the thing, is in 2010, I mean, he's done like, like black metal and stuff since then. But like in 2010, he wasn't really like...
No, and he's not supposed to. He's supposed to be the one that doesn't have the creep vibe in the movie. Like
you tell that to the hairstylist then, because he came away immediately. Sorry, he looked like a creep with the hair. She thought it'd be the other one just because Rory was a little too like overtly creepy, while the other guy, being such a film nerd, kind of I would have thought so too, probably, if I had not known the 2 killers. So I will say, though, to the point, they did the best job of taking you off the scent of Emma Roberts in this movie than any of the 4 movies to date. Like,
yeah, that was a big surprise.
In fact, she gets like slashed so early on and does seem so innocent all the way up until the end there.
I think part of that is really, she's a really good actress. Like, you stop thinking she could even be a suspect.
That's interesting you say that, because you might need to tell me some of her films, because I'm still wondering, is she a great actress? I think she's just perfectly fine.
Oh, I think she's good. I think she's really good in this. Like, you stop thinking she's even a suspect at points, and you're just kind of along for the ride.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. I think if anybody watches the first time, like, I don't think they wouldn't have any clue that it was her. And again, I do like this one too on a rewatch. I think this might be my number 2 behind the original as well. But as someone like Alex who's not seen 5 and 6, I do hope they go away from person tied to Sydney, because that was a little disappointing that this just didn't do anything new in that way, in that it's still a person connected to Sydney seeking revenge in a big elaborate way that kills tons of innocent people. Like, we've seen that now 4 straight movies, and I do hope 5 and 6 kind of veer away from that.
I want to pose an interesting question to you guys, because I was looking up other movies that came out this year, and Cabin in the Woods came out that same year that Scream 4 did. And Cabin in the Woods has been one of my favorite films of this century, right? Like, I absolutely adore that film. But, it's a meta kind of horror thing. Is it because I hadn't seen any of the Scream that I feel that, like, was it more novel to me because I hadn't experienced Scream? I still think it's way better. I mean,
probably to an extent, probably to an extent it felt fresher because you hadn't seen the Scream movies. But I agree. Cabin in the Woods is one of my all-time favorite movies too, and I had seen all the Scream movies, so I don't think it's a necessity. But it couldn't have hurt, I don't think.
I just wonder if that was like, if like not having seen Scream was like, oh, well, that's why you're so excited about Cabin in the Woods, because I don't have the proper context.
I don't think so, because I do think it felt fresh in the moment. Cabin in the Woods actually didn't make it to theaters in America till 2012. I know it's listed as like a 2011 movie.
Yeah.
It had sat on a shelf for actually a couple of years. It was one of those weird ones that got stuck in some rights and company shifting. Chris Hemsworth had a couple movies like that. That and Red Dawn remake as well, both kind of got delayed forever. But yeah, I think Cabin in the Woods still stood on its own as a Scream of its moment, where it was the new, fresh kind of meta thing.
Agreed. That's all I have to say about that. No more words.
No, I appreciate it.
Just agree. That's how we shut down Alex Cuervo's conversation. But no, I couldn't have hurt. It probably felt fresher to you, but like it felt like a classic, I think, to everybody in the horror genre, is my guess.
Yeah, this was an era, too, where they were starting to do 10-year later sequels that people weren't necessarily asking for. Zoolander had bombed in its day, and 9/11 affected it, and nobody liked it right away, but then it sort of became a comedy classic to people over the years. They had a late sequel. Anchorman had a much later sequel. So, like, this began like an era where, like, there was a much later, like, hey, can we milk this IP a little bit?
But this was one of the first horror, like, prolonged sequels, right? This was, of the, like, all the ones that followed, it seems, by my recollection, to be one of the first ones, right?
I don't think so. I think Texas Chainsaw and some of those were before this.
Okay.
Could be wrong. We could just do the research.
But in keeping continuity, I think Texas Chainsaw, like Halloween, isn't there some muddled continuity between them all? And I think Scream was just a straight up bring back the original cast, original timeline, the whole thing. So yeah, you're right. It wouldn't be the first horror one, but I'm just saying it was in a wave of this becoming more common where the legacy sequel became a thing.
Legacy sequel, yeah.
Yeah, and it did, like, I do agree that it's one of the first. I mean, H2O did a little bit, but it's one of the first. Like, this was around the time we were getting the glossy reboot of everything, Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw, all those. But this one brought back all the characters, which I think separates it from that. And also, and again, and I'll say this every time we do this, this series is all about Dewey and Gale. It's just all about Dewey and Gale.
There's less Dewey and Gale there's a lot. There's less sweet Dewey and Gale in this one. You know, they just kind of wrap it up at the end.
They've got this big love story, this overarching love story.
Yeah, they're separated for a chunk of this one. Maybe that's why in The Empire Strikes Back they were sent on separate missions for the bulk of the movie.
Because Gail doesn't take second place to anybody. She's willing to. It's just her husband. That's all right. She's still going to circumvent him and solve the case.
This one got everybody stabbed. I think the whole cast now, the original OG3, have all been stabbed multiple times.
Yeah. I like the reverse camera gag with Gale among the hay bales. That was really good. It was well constructed sequence. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I thought they did a really good job with the don't let the kid in, will he, won't he, with the Culkin kid.
Yeah, with Rory.
Where they're trying to decide, and Sidney's just like, no, we don't let them in. We don't know. We don't know. We don't let them in. Yeah. I thought that scene was really well constructed. And I actually thought and this is where some Scream movies get into trouble, but I actually thought the ending was well planned out. Like, their plan did not seem crazy.
The motivation, the plan was well. Again, the motivation seems a little old man screaming at clouds, like you said.
Yes.
But and then her execution of it was, jumping, the physicality of it was great. I mean, that sequence was really good.
Yeah, it was really well thought out. Like, the whole point, you're like, oh man, she put a lot of time into this. Like, they figured this out. But I thought that worked well. I thought if I have a critique, it's probably that the hospital stuff happened too fast and too clean. But, we also have to kind of get out of there at that point.
Well, also, the finale taking place at a much more subdued, closed off kind of quiet place was different. But how's no one in that place responding to multiple gunshots going off in a tiny hospital?
Yeah, Elise said that. She's like, where is everybody in this hospital?
Yeah, it was like an empty hospital, except for the people that we needed in there. But also, it's just like all this stuff is so well thought out. And then within 10 seconds of talking to Dewey, she trips up and says something she shouldn't to Lee. It just all feels so convenient at the very end.
That trope would have been more annoying if he figured it out, because that's happened so many movies where you say it outright to the person and they get it. The fact is, Dewey didn't get it. He recites it to Gale later, and then she gets it.
Which is great.
So I was kind of okay with it in that regard, but it's still an annoying trope when the bad guy gives away a little too much info.
Yeah, agreed.
He reacted to it in that scene when she divulged it. He reacted like he did get it, but I mean, it's in
true Dewey fashion.
Exactly.
Really,
yeah. I mean, it's Dewey after all, so it's a very forgivable kind of.
Yeah, all of that stuff happened really quick, and also at that point, I don't really understand. And again, we're critiquing small stuff here, but at that point, I don't really understand what Emma Roberts' plan is.
Yeah, how does she think she's gonna? Yeah.
It becomes like a shock and awe thing. She's just like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna kill everybody. And I don't have a plan anymore. I'm not going to be the good guy. I don't know she probably would have been better off just hoping Sidney died or hoping Sidney didn't remember what happened.
Yeah.
But far be it for me to tell a psycho how to live their life.
I mean, that kind of was the deal until everybody busted in the room and stopped her from killing Sidney. I guess that really was. But at that point, she's like, screw it. I'm shooting all of you.
That's right. You guys have ruined this for me. I can't be America's sweetheart, the next Kim Kardashian.
I was looking at the IMDb for the following movie, and so Hayden Panettiere, Kirby's back, right?
Oh, I wish you hadn't heard. I wish you didn't know that. That's a shame.
I got that spoiled for me too, just in the media in the past couple of years.
That's a shame, because that had been a real is she, isn't she dead thing. Everybody wanted Kirby to come back. Everybody loves Kirby, but there was a will she, won't she?
Well, they need a Randy.
Well, she comes back, but she comes back in 7. She doesn't come back in.
Oh, shit.
Sorry, she comes back in 6. She doesn't come back in the Scream 5.
Okay. All right. Well,
but Cam, I think you and all people who are in tune to this thing also learned that it got spoiled. They announced it. They straight up said she was in the movie.
Yeah, they did, but it was a will they, won't they for a decade before it finally happened. My thing, I actually think they meant to kill her, and the internet brought her back to life. I think. Because, I don't think they thought she was some sort of, amazing character that we have to keep alive. I think they just didn't kill her in as obvious a way, and then people kind of latched onto it, and then they were well, I guess we could.
You didn't get that stretcher scene that you kind of would get if they want to tease that somebody makes it.
So I think they were when people kept asking for her, they were like, well, fuck it, I guess we could bring her back. I mean, she is a fan favorite. But I don't think that was a planned thing. I think it was just a thing that the internet kept asking for.
Oh, okay. I thought she was just going to be an enduring cast member.
Well, she may be. Well, who knows from here on out? But yeah, I mean, she comes back in like a meaningful way in 6. So you got one more before she comes back. But that was 12 years, 10 years in actual life timeline.
So yeah, they've kind of done the real time gaps between the movies of the actual gaps that was happening, so 3 years between 2 and 3 and such. And then the 10-year gap was the 10-year gap in the movie as well.
Right. And so now it's another 10-year gap, 11 years.
Something like that. Yeah. I think it's around 10.
So, all right. Yeah. Well,
so are we gonna continue?
Well, I like Jenna Ortega a lot.
We joked about how we do 5, 6, 7. Except is 7 going to happen now in real life? Right now, there's crazy news about how the 2 main leads may both be out, but we'll see. But yeah, I think if 7 can come out in the next year or 2, we would come back with Cuervo and do a 5, 6, 7 and do another mini-sode, maxi-sode.
I don't know that we're going to get that. We may have to go off the rails and just do 5.
You know what we'll do? We'll do Cuervo 5, 6, and the faculty. We'll do that triple.
Or we can do
Rodriguez is an in-universe director, as they show his title card when they're showing Stab.
Or we could do 5 and 6, and then do our like some Scream fan fiction. We'll all write a Scream fan fiction, and we'll act it out.
I mean, in a way, all these villains have been doing Scream /fiction. Like that's their
kind of. That's basically what's happening.
Yeah. You're not. I want to kill a bunch of people related to you because I'm also related to you, and I'll explain why in a really insane way, and also bring along some other schmuck for the ride to be the second killer.
Yeah, there's always another schmuck to come along for the ride.
Why do I feel like that's me in this case?
Oh, it is you. Yeah, we made you agree to this.
That's going to be you in my Scream 8 fan fiction. Me and Alex out killing people.
We usually write down a few notable lines. This one didn't have a ton of like memorable lines, but the friend of Rory, the other film kid, as he's about to die, he's like, "No, I'm gay." If that helps.
I also like at the end when Dewey goes, "What'd she hit me with?" And she goes, "Don't know."
You don't want to know. You kind of got your ass handed to you with a bedpan.
Yeah, there were a few good ones in there. There were a few good.
You mentioned Elisa had a couple notes too. Did she find this one to be top tier, maybe second best as well?
Yeah.
Alex?
I'd say she liked it similar, maybe not as much as I did, because I gave this like a B plus A minus, I gave 1 a solid A, 2 a B, 3 a C. And so this one I'd say is, kind of in between B plus, A minus.
So am I correct in saying that you guys both like this one better than Scream 2?
Yeah, I think so.
They're on par to me. I think we joked on a previous one that A, B, C, B. That's kind of how Paper Street in general kind of looks at the Scream franchise for the most part. So yeah, 2 and 4 seem to be on even keel. Is just like the right behind the first one. And
I think I don't know. It's I have a goldfish memory, so I don't even remember 2 at this point.
It's been too long.
I will side with Cameron about like Olifant and Laurie Metcalf are more memorable maybe and stronger as the reveals and stuff.
The second half of Scream 2 is fire. I don't care what anybody says. Second half of Scream 2 is on par with Scream 1. The first half is a little clunky, but the second half is fire.
Yeah, this may be recency bias, but yeah, I think 2 and 4 are pretty close, but I might veer for 2 as well.
3 had, so from a production design standpoint, 2 had that beautiful theater, yes. That was wonderful. I loved all of that stuff. The Greek tragedy.
It also had the climb over Ghostface in the car, which is amazing.
Yeah, that was a great sequence. But 3, even though it was one of my least favorite entries, I was talking to Ben about it, and he reminded me that, man, the recreation of the sets from 1, that whole sequence was well thought out. I mean, it was a good idea. I don't know that the execution was great, but that looked really cool. Whole set was also really beautiful and really cool.
Well, now that Scream 7 is who knows what's going on with it. Scream 3 has provided a lot of good memes for Scream 7. The whole, is there another rewrite joke with Eddie McCarthy and all of the actors sitting in front of the house waiting to figure out what they're going to act. There's a bunch of new memes popping up from Scream 3. So it's not only a movie.
It's really turning into a stab movie.
It is. I still want to make a stab movie. I want to make a stab movie. So far, no one has let me, which is unfortunate.
I know we had looked up some of the cast before we did this one, but now seeing it, realizing that Anna Paquin, Kristen Bell, Lucy Hale, among others, were a little bit of a stunt cast in that they were that cold open. But this does have, like we said, one of the deepest benches of any of them because, again, Alison Brie, Anthony Anderson, Adam Brody, Hayden Panettiere, Emma Roberts. Is it the strongest one you'd say, Cam?
Yeah, the cast
probably does the best job of extending the world outside of the immediate group. So there's always Sydney or Emma Roberts, the Sydney substitute in this movie, and the 4 or 5 friends. And then there's Dewey and Gale. But this one does a really good job of extending the universe. We've got 3 cops that we know by name. We've got, the mom. We've got we've got Alison Brie and all these. There's all these. It just seems like a deeper world with more characters than usual. Also, poor Alison Brie got killed despite no connection to pretty much anything in the movie. Like, why she was killed in the grand scheme, I have no idea.
They set piece that in the center of the movie, like this major thing. Like, it was such the obvious, like, dark elevator into the dark garage, and it was such a build of, like, we know what's coming. It's just, it was weirdly out of place scene to me. I don't know why.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
They were treating her like she was, like, this is, like, the final act of a major character death, but yeah.
She's also just such a token side character to the actual plot of the movie that, like, her even needing to die felt strange. Like, she's not a part of the thrust of the movie. But I mean, she was kind of bitchy, so I guess that was the idea, is that she'll get her comeuppance. But I don't know, it just felt that whole thing just felt weird. She was very, like, Alison Brie's great and everything, but she was like a very one note bitchy character that didn't really go anywhere. So
true. Well, I'm never sad when she shows up in a cast, though, because she's
no, I mean, she was like this episode's Parker Posey. She was there to add a little class to the establishment, but she didn't have quite as much to work with as Posey did.
No, she was not. Parker Posey hung around a lot longer, had a lot more kind of scenes to scenery to chew up,
But yeah, there was a great cast. I think it rivals 2. I think 2 had a really deep cast too, if you think back about it, and all the different college students. And
I mean, that seems to be what they do. Like, that's my expectation now.
Yeah,
this one,
well,
knowing what I know about 5, it felt like they were truly introducing a new set of characters. This one didn't do that, because when you think about it, other than Hayden, who we know now does come back, they kill off every new person. So in a weird way, this didn't legacy sequel itself the way I think 5 and 6 move forward in doing so, where it is new cast and old cast.
Well, I will say, since you brought that up, the idea was that this was going to be the start of a new trilogy, and that Wes Craven was going to direct 3 new Scream movies kind of back to back to back. But then Wes Craven sadly passed away, and we didn't they kind of stopped making Scream movies. But yeah, the idea was they were going to do Scream 4, 5, and 6 within about a 5-year span, starting from Scream 4. Also, probably doesn't help that Scream 4, like you said, was the softest box office opening. So I think they used Craven as an excuse to go back to the drawing board. But yeah, it would have been interesting to see how it would have worked out as a trilogy, given that it did kind of slaughter everybody. But that's what's good about Scream. I mean, every episode seems like it slaughters everybody, right? And then there's always new people.
Yeah, I think we mentioned at the end of 3, they weren't able to bring back Dempsey. He was initially going to be like her love interest years later, as they teased at the end of 3. But Dewey and Gale didn't have the Dewey and Gale spark, like you said. And I think it's just because they were separate most of the movie, but still trying to figure out what she sees in him, because he's a goof.
He's a lovable goof, damn it. How dare you?
Yeah, well, so are you. And
that's why I love Dewey.
Yeah.
Well, we're all your Gale, man. We all love you too, Cam. We love Alex Cuervo for agreeing to do this nonsense with us. He's done not 1, but 2, 3, and 4 with us. So yeah, we appreciate it. We're glad you've enjoyed it. Since 7 is a TBD kind of movie right now, I don't know if we just end up watching 5 and 6 on our own and then reconvene later when 7 does come out. But yeah, I'm kind of interested to see where 5 and 6 go, because it does feel like they're the first ones that move a slightly different direction, hopefully away from Sydney's long lost cousin, aunt, uncle, brother, I hope.
Well, I mean,
no spoilers, Cam.
Sunk cost fallacy at this point. I've got to keep going.
My lips are sealed, but I will say that the next one's very good. So I would definitely, I would definitely go through at least the next one, whether we do it on the podcast or not. It's definitely
people reacted really good to 5, and it seemed like 6 was really polarized.
6 was a bit of a mixed bag, but it had its moments. But yeah, Scream 5, I thought was, when I first saw it in the theater, I thought it was the second best of the series.
Wow,
I've walked that back. But it's in the mix with 2 and 4, I think. I think
you already made Alex and I walk back that 4 was the second best in the series after reminding us that 2 had really good stuff.
I think people forget how good Scream 2 is, man. Scream 2, the second half of Scream 2, I think is every bit as good as Scream 1. Like, I really do. Now, the first half is not, and it's got a lot of clunky stuff, but like, there's Scream 2. I'm telling you, Scream 2 is fire. I will die on that hill.
You talked me out of my B+. It's now a B.
Oh.
Well done, Cameron.
Wait, you went down on Scream 2?
I downgraded 4.
Well, I mean, you don't have to downgrade 4. You can upgrade 2.
No.
Yeah, well, you're the boss.
No, don't tell him how to live. All right, we'll let Cuervo go from this extended.
Wait, have we been recording this whole time?
I'm free to enjoy these on my own now.
Yeah,
yes, you are.
Cuffs off Alex Cuervo and let him go back to society.
But no, I mean, it's been nice to revisit these two because, again, the sequels I had not really revisited ever or watched regularly since. So it's been good to get them all, with fresh eyes again.
I'm eager for 5 now, so I'll just text you guys and let you know.
Yeah, we'll just have we'll get on Zoom and just talk like human beings and not record it. Isn't that weird? We'll try that and see how that goes.
That's weird.
Indeed. So yeah, wrapping up. Thank you again, Cuervo, for this, and
thanks for having me.
Late to the party, but we're glad you made it.
Bye, gang.
Bye, guys. Thanks a lot.
All right, we have made it to the end of this little experiment. As I've done with the previous talks, a little by the numbers action. As we stated, this was the lowest grossing of the franchise to date, making $38 million in the US and Canada, $59 million internationally, for a total of $97.2 million. This one didn't even hit number one on its opening April 2011 weekend. That went to a season/holiday themed animated feature hop, in case you're wondering. But with the underperforming box office, with Wes Craven's health in decline, the studio did pivot to making an anthology TV spinoff series, also simply titled Scream, that aired for 3 seasons, 2 of which on MTV and the last on VH1. And with Craven's unfortunate passing in 2015, it wouldn't be until 2019 that Spyglass Media Group would actually relaunch this franchise. More on the recent and coming installment shortly, though. Do want to also say, sorry we couldn't coordinate with Mrs. Cuervo actually jumping on here to give her thoughts officially, but Elise was mentioned throughout by Alex as watching alongside with him for each sequel and enjoying the ride almost as much as he did. But we are glad that 1, Mr. Cuervo was willing and able to knock out this harebrained plan with us, and 2, that we got to revisit these films ourselves. I know Cam has seen each one of them multiple times, but as I stated at the top, I don't believe I'd revisited a single one of these since seeing them on their initial theatrical run. And I had forgotten loads of moments and kills and cameos from each. Also, big thanks to all of you who stuck this one out. Again, it was an experimental episode that just kind of took on a life of its own after we had recorded that first installment with Cuervo. But like I said, I'm glad he dug them. And just to follow up on some things we mentioned at the end of the Scream 4 talk, in the time since those recordings, since that last recording specifically, a lot of news has come out regarding this eventual 7th entry. We mentioned, without actually mentioning it, that Melissa Barrera has unceremoniously been fired from it, which happened just a day or so before recording that bit on part 4. And in the time since, it was announced just days before this wraparound bit I'm recording here that both Courtney Cox and Neve Campbell will be making their returns to Scream 7. So we may actually see this franchise back on track, back on the big screen sooner than later after all. But until that day, gang, on behalf of Cameron Burns and our guest, Alex Cuervo, thank you all for tuning in to this presentation of the Paper Street Podcast. You can follow both programs on Instagram at Paper Street Podcast and on the respective pods homepage, paperstreetpodcast.com, where you'll also find show notes and additional links to Paper Street Pictures and our guest, who again is a fabulous composer, musician, frequent collaborator with Paper Street Pictures. Alex Cuervo was late to the party, but we're glad he made it to not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 Scream movies. And counting. We'll see if we come back for 5, 6, 7 down the road. If you were late to the party, no worries. We're glad you made it too. Thanks for tuning in. Goodbye, Sydney.
So much Creed.